It's another sad moment in our country's history. The 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump, has yet again been indicted by the Biden DOJ, a political party in power that is now repeatedly using police force to indict and arrest and potentially eliminate its political opponents from competition. This is a politicized prosecution. It is a political persecution through prosecution, now in a third indictment just in a matter of months, against the person who is still at present the lead contender in the Republican primary for U.S. president. I want to be very clear. I am running for U.S. president in that same Republican primary. It would be easier for me if Donald Trump were eliminated from competition. That's not how I want to win. This is not about politics to me. This is about first principles. We do not want to become a country where the party in power is able to use banana republic-like tactics to eliminate its political opponents. Yet I'm sad to say that's exactly where we are. The allegations in this indictment fall flat. It is wrong and incorrect and inaccurate to place blame for what happened on January 6th at the feet of Donald Trump.
The country is in a very dark place right now. But even after everything the deep state has done to me, I will never give up on America. Mark my words. In 2024, we will win back the White House. We will make America great again. I have no doubt about it. They come at me from left. They come at me from right. The rhinos, the communists, the Marxists, the fascists. We will not only survive, we will be stronger than ever before.
All right, guys, so we got to talk about the bombshell news that you may or may not have heard about by now, which is Trump has been indicted again, okay, for a third time, this time having to do with January 6th, okay? I mean, you have the federal government essentially punishing the former president for his freedom of speech and daring to challenge the outcome of the election, which in the indictment, if you read the indictment, I read the indictment, they acknowledge that he has the right to do, right? He has the right to do that, to take the actions that he took to challenge the election. But anyways, yeah, they're punishing him for his freedom of speech and for challenging the election. But we all knew that this was coming, okay, because the DOJ is politically charged and they're trying to keep President Donald J. Trump from retaking the office, okay? They're trying their best. They're trying their best to interfere in the election. And quite honestly, in my opinion, I think that this is just going to be another boost for Trump in the polls, and at very least in the Republican primary, and who knows, maybe even in the general election. And I want to talk about that because, in my opinion, honestly, if I'm Trump, I'm welcoming this stuff, okay? Because it seems like the more they throw at the man, the stronger he gets. So let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to play a video here of Jack Smith, the special counsel, who's in charge of this investigation, explaining these charges and making the announcement against Trump. Take a look.
Good evening. Today, an indictment was unsealed, charging Donald J. Trump with conspiring to defraud the United States, conspiring to disenfranchise voters, and conspiring and attempting to obstruct an official proceeding. The indictment was issued by a grand jury of citizens here in the District of Columbia, and it sets forth the crimes charged in detail. I encourage everyone to read it in full. The attack on our nation's capital on January 6th, 2021 was an unprecedented assault on the seat of American democracy. As described in the indictment, it was fueled by lies. Lies by the defendant targeted at obstructing a bedrock function of the U.S. government, the nation's process of collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election. Since the attack on our Capitol, the Department of Justice has remained committed to ensuring accountability for those criminally responsible for what happened that day. This case is brought consistent with that commitment, and our investigation of other individuals continues. In this case, my office will seek a speedy trial so that our evidence can be tested in court and judged by a jury of citizens. In the meantime, I must emphasize that the indictment is only an allegation and that the defendant must be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. I would like to thank the members of the Federal Bureau of Investigation who are working on this investigation with my office, as well as the many career prosecutors and law enforcement agents from around the country who have worked on previous January 6th investigations. These women and men are public servants of the very highest order, and it is a privilege to work alongside them. Thank you.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, again, Trump was indicted on 4 federal charges out of the probe, including conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. Now, here's the thing. I read the indictment. I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me that the crux of at least trying to find Trump guilty on some of these charges is this idea that Trump knew that the claims that he was making was false, because throughout the indictment, they repeatedly state that Trump knew that the claims that he was making was false. And again, I'm just telling you guys what the indictment says. I'm not saying either way, right? But can they actually prove that? I think it's going to be pretty hard, okay? Only one time in this indictment, as far as I saw, that they accused Trump of privately admitting that Trump knew that an allegation or a lawsuit did not have any basis or that the claims were unsubstantiated. And that refers to the Kraken lawsuit that was filed by Sidney Powell. You guys remember that, with the allegations against Georgia and voting machines? That was dismissed by Georgia pretty quickly. They claimed that Trump in private acknowledged that the claims were crazy, right? But yet he tweeted about it before the lawsuit was filed. Okay, so from what I read, only one time did they actually accuse Trump of privately acknowledging that, hey, you know, these claims are unsubstantiated, but, you know, in public basically presented it as if he actually really believes it. Now, again, I'm not necessarily sure if that's proof or evidence that, you know, Trump does not actually believe his claims. I mean, to this day, he is still repeating these claims. And just because an official tells you that, hey, what you believe is not true, that doesn't mean that Trump himself doesn't believe it, right? I think it's really hard for them to prove that Trump doesn't actually believe the claims that he put out there, okay? I mean, again, I don't think it's a crime to believe things despite what your officials tell you, right? I don't think that's a crime, okay? Because again, you know, if that is a crime, then you are punishing free speech. And you would have to be a mind reader to know that Trump didn't actually believe the claims that he was making. Again, seems pretty far-fetched to me. It seems like a stretch, right? I'm just saying. And also on top of that, you know, I don't think it's a crime to challenge the outcome of the election. If it was, then all Democrats should be arrested and prosecuted as well, too, because, you know, every single time a Republican wins a presidential election, Democrats challenge the election, including making unsubstantiated claims about voting machines and all types of other stuff, fraud and all types of other stuff. They definitely probably didn't believe, but they made the claims anyways because they were salty that Trump won, or they were salty that Bush won, or whatever. That, again, up until 2020 was totally fair game, right? It's just fascinating how that works. But again, I'm not a lawyer, right? So, you know, take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. But that to me sounds like, you know, what they would have to prove in order to get Trump on at least some of the charges. I think that the January 6th stuff is bunk. I think clearly we all know that Trump told the protesters to protest peacefully, right? And that he, you know, was not actually really trying to you know, overthrow the government, right? So again, I mean, there's a lot more detail. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to basically demonstrate how this is probably going to backfire on the deep state and the Democrats who are persecuting Trump for political purposes. We all know that. And it just so happens that, again, coincidentally, every single time there is a spotlight on Biden and the Biden crime family, or some scandal involving Joe Biden, one of these indictments comes out against Trump to distract the public from the fact that the Biden crime family should actually be impeached and removed from office. Take a look.
The timing of this indictment was coordinated to take the heat off Biden. This is the third time this has happened. You ready? On March 17th, Hunter admitted the laptop was his. And on the very next day, Trump received word Alvin Bragg was indicting him in New York. On June 8th, an FBI document broke that Ukraine paid Biden a $5 million bribe. And the next day, on June 9th, Biden's DOJ indicts Trump on the Mar-a-Lago documents. Yesterday, on July 31st, a Biden insider told Congress that Biden spoke with Hunter Biden's business partners dozens of times, and Hunter was paid handsomely to get his dad to fire the prosecutor in Ukraine. And then today, August 1st, Biden's Justice Department indicts Trump on January 6 charges.
Coincidence? I think not. What's also probably not a coincidence as well, too, is that for this Trump case, U.S. District Judge Tanya S. Chunkin has been assigned to this. Okay, she's an Obama appointee and the only federal judge in Washington, D.C. who has sentenced January 6 defendants to sentences longer than the government had requested. So basically, again, they're coming for Trump's neck, right? They're coming for everything. They're actually really trying to put this man in jail, right? But again, you know, like all of these indictments, okay, whether or not they actually end up putting Trump in jail, it really just fuels this idea that the deep state, that the Department of Justice, that the Biden administration is after Trump. They're trying to interfere in the election through locking up political opponents, and it does nothing but make Trump stronger, at the very least, among Republicans in the primary, which has CNN stunned that that is what is happening.
Let's look specifically about the former president and the support before we get to the focus group that you did. The support that he has nationally has grown since February. 12 points since February. And DeSantis, who was just right behind him at a time, is now even further behind him. Who are these people who aren't part, maybe necessarily, of like that Trump core, what we call the Fifth Avenue Republicans, who, you know, he famously says, I could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and those people will support me. But the people on top of that who are looking at everything that's going on, that happened on January 6th, and they're saying, okay, I'll throw my support behind Donald Trump.
The less educated you are, the more likely you are to support Donald Trump. Lower income, people who've been unemployed at some point in the last 5 years. It's a socioeconomic level that was once a Democratic voter.
More evidence tonight that the Republican Party truly is Donald Trump's party. New Siena College New York Times polling that shows Republican voters favoring him by 54 to 17% over his nearest rival, Ron DeSantis.
There were 26 different demographic groups that got broken down. You know how many of those groups Donald Trump didn't lead amongst? No. Zero. He led in every single...
These were just Republican voters.
Just Republican voters, right?
And nationwide.
Correct. Nationwide, Republican voters. He led in all 26 groups, including his weakest groups. Those with a college degree still favor Trump by double digits. Those making more than $100,000 per year favor Trump by double digits.
Is there any evidence that, you know, if the field were to winnow, well, what would the data show?
If, in fact, you eliminate all the other candidates besides Ron DeSantis, and it's just a matchup between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, guess who wins?
Let me guess.
Donald Trump. Donald Trump wins by over 30 points in that matchup.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. CNN shocked, right? They're shocked and disappointed, openly disappointed. You can see that the indictments are not hurting Trump in the Republican primary, okay? And their explanation for that, according to Frank Luntz, is that, well, the voters are dumb and poor, right? That is his explanation, even though you have college-educated voters, which, again, doesn't mean they're not dumb, okay? Having a college degree doesn't mean that you're smart, okay? It doesn't mean that you're intelligent. And just because you don't have a college degree, that doesn't mean that you're not educated, okay? That also doesn't mean that you're not intelligent. There are plenty of people that don't have a college degree that are intelligent. We got to make that clear. But even though you have college educated voters in the GOP that also still prefer Trump over DeSantis, okay? Maybe, just maybe, they see that it's a political persecution of a president, and they also like what Trump did when he was in office, right? They care more about the fact that our country was in great shape when the man was in office, and we know what we're getting. Also, the threat of January 6th, for whatever it is, there's no threat, because if he wins again, there will be no another January 6th, right? One, because we saw, okay, that the courts and that the government prevented January 6th from becoming more than what it was, right? First and foremost. And two, he only can serve in office for 4 more years, right? And then he's done. Okay. Again, this scare over January 6th is just, it's really nonsense. Okay. In regards to what Trump may do if he gets back in office. Yeah, we're going to have a great economy. We're going to be respected on the world stage. Hopefully, no new wars. Hopefully, we can finally do something about the border, right? Hopefully, we crack down on crime. These are things that the voters want, and that's why they are pro-Trump, right? And again, it's not just the primary that Trump is in a boost with every indictment. It seems now that even in the general election, Trump is virtually tied with Biden as well, too, despite these indictments, in which, again, the mainstream liberal media is stunned and speechless that this is the current state of the polls, right? Despite the Democrats' best attempt to arrest their political opponent. Take a look.
NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Kristen Welker, who's been patiently waiting for us. I appreciate it. Kristen, I want to ask about politics. There's a New York Times Siena College poll out today. It asked registered voters nationwide last week if the 2024 presidential election were right now, who would get your vote? And it's a dead heat between President Biden and former President Trump, 43% each. But when you look at the voters who say, I don't like either of them right now, Biden gets a slight edge. I'm wondering if that means that the impact of all these indictments might be greater politically than what we have thought, Kristen?
Well, it could be. I think that's the key, Kate. It's possible that these indictments are starting to have an impact on the general election, and that could have an impact on independent voters, for example, who could be crucial in this next general election. Think about what happened in 2020. President Biden beat former President Trump among independents 42 to 37%. So think about that. But think about the primary. We have only seen former President Trump get stronger, become more emboldened with each new indictment. In fact, we've seen a real spike in terms of his fundraising every time one of these new indictments comes down.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that, right? Trump gets stronger with every indictment, right? Like, it's not hurting him in the primary, okay? And I mean, it's especially not hurt him in the primary. And still, when it comes to the general election polling, he's tied with Biden, right? Again, he's tied with Biden. Again, this is getting the worst case scenario for the media, okay? Because what they actually really want, they want Trump to win the primary, but they want him to lose the general, right? And, you know, it just says a whole lot about the state of the country and how people are feeling about Biden if all these indictments being thrown at Trump isn't really even hurting him that much when it comes to the general. I mean, Biden still is virtually tied with Trump. Kind of crazy to think about, right? And I think that Trump's only going to get stronger as we head towards the general election. Now, who knows? If they find him guilty on, you know, some of these charges, maybe that might swing stuff. Because, again, the timing of it all is politically motivated, whether it comes to taking the attention off of Biden and the crime family or the date of the trials, okay? All of it is going to happen right before the election. And that's why it's so important for Republicans to get it together and make sure that we're having an impeachment trial, at least right before the election, while all the Trump trials are happening, to take the heat off the Trump trials, right? To create an equivalency and to basically muddy the waters, right? That's the political game here from the Republicans, okay? So, again, the question is, what are Republicans going to do to counter what, again, is clearly a politically motivated hit job against the former president of the United States? They need to do something to take the heat off of Trump and take the attention off of these politically motivated trials that will be coming up right before the election. And the way to do that is through impeaching Biden and making sure that Senate trial takes place, maybe during the spring, maybe during the summer, while all these other trials are going on with Trump. Again, we're going to have a very fascinating election season, political season coming up. This is going to be one for the books, okay? It's going to be historic, just depending on how things go. But hey, up until then, what I do know is that with each indictment, Trump goes stronger. It will be interesting to see with this indictment what the poll numbers look like moving forward, right? And because I would love to see another liberal media meltdown if the poll numbers shoot up for Trump despite the January 6th indictment, which is the big one, right? That's the big one that they've been waiting on. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.